Hey Emily, it is Jaden. Okay, so here is what I'm thinking is you're not editing your RAWs full enough. When they come straight out of the camera, they look rather bland. Um, the JPEG has all of the camera settings applied to it, so if you don't do any editing at all, the JPEG will always look better. The RAW is for if you really want to fine-tune stuff. This is what the JPEG looks like straight out of the camera, and this is my edited version of the RAW file. So let's reset it. Okay, here's the RAW and the JPEG. So you can see this one's kind of flat. The colors are less saturated. This one is sharper. And the JPEG, the highlights are overblown. They're kind of overblown in the image period. But yeah, if you're not going to do any editing, the JPEG will look better. So here's what I recommend you do. When you open the RAW, you're going to go to Develop, and your very first step should be right here at Camera Calibration. And you see where it says Profile? By default, it will always be Adobe Standard. So what you want to do is experiment and decide which one you like best. Since this is a landscape, I generally like landscape the best, although vivid is also kind of nice, although sometimes the shadows can be too dark. But I generally like landscape for landscapes and portrait for portrait, obviously. So then your next step would be white balance. I always try auto just to see what happens, and it's very rarely that I'm happy with the result. You can try and match the time of day of what it was like. If it was cloudy out, then try cloudy, see what it looks like. Flash surprisingly looks pretty well under most circumstances. And I always go back to the original as shot just to compare. So we have daylight, which is a little warmer. The original flash. Flash looks too green to me, so I'm choosing daylight for this one. Then just to see what it looks like, I click auto tone, and I'm very rarely happy with it, so I undo it. The shortcut key for undo is Control-Z, in case you didn't know. Exposure can be fun depending on how your photo turned out. If it was too dark because you underexposed it, that's obviously where you start. Contrast, I like adding contrast, but I don't use the contrast slider. Instead I use clarity, which also adds sharpness, and for whatever reason, I love the way it looks. So as I move it, you can see it gets darker and much more detail close up. Let me see. But depending on the photograph, I almost never choose 100%. What I've found is if you want it looking more natural, stop at around 20-25. If you really want to go crazy, go up to 50. And if you want to go artistic, like some other kind of photo, then you can go all the way to 100 or whatever. But just go with, what looks best to you. For my landscapes, like I said, I generally go about 20. And then vibrance, not sure exactly what it does because it's almost identical to saturation. So I never use saturation, I always use vibrance. And if you go too much, it becomes way too colorful like this. So for the most part, I stick between 20 and 40. And these days, I'm almost always at 20. So that's the other thing I do. those two things are, I guess 3 things alone, are pretty much all you need to get it pretty close to the JPEG, if not better than the JPEG. So now we'll compare, and already you can see the raw is now warmer, it's more colorful, sharper, better contrast. So I would argue it's already better than the JPEG for my personal taste. For noise reduction, if you're using high ISO, you're definitely going to want to use it. If the photo's not sharp enough, you can get the detail in the trees to really come out. One thing I like to do is, get sharpening around 100 and then radius to 1.5 or so. And that winds up making it look more sharper than if you just pump up amount all the way. Radius is basically changing the pixel size. So if it's at 1.0, it's changing 1 pixel per time. If it's 3.0, it's changing 3 pixels at a time, basically. So, yeah. Like I said, noise reduction is really good for high ISO. I know you do that sometimes. Lens correction can be pretty good. If you see here, the image is actually warping because it's correcting the flaws of my lens. Remember what I said about high quality lenses? Well, this is not a high quality lens. So, I usually kind of ignore it, but sometimes it's worth doing. I think it makes you have to do a little bit extra work, because if you notice, there's less color over here now. So I'm just going to leave it, because I don't care about that too much. Anyway, that's pretty much the settings I do pretty much every time I edit the raw file. One thing you can do, which I should also do, not sure where it is exactly. But you can set some of your default settings. So if you do auto apply tone adjustments, let's say you like the way 20 clarity and 20 vibrance looks, you can set that under preferences, presets, auto apply tone adjustments, and then every photo you look at will already have that turned on. I don't see any for changing the camera mode, which is probably the most important one. But yeah, I pretty much never use Adobe Standard anymore. So anyway, try that, see how your photos look, and maybe you don't need to upgrade your camera at all. Alright, take care.